friends, this is Nazmican. Today we are going to look at an important game played between the 11th world champion Robert James Fischer and many times US champion and author of very well-known books Grandmaster Reuben Fine. Robert James Fischer is white and Reuben Fine is black. 1 e4 as expected by Fischer. He famously quoted that 1 e4 it's best by the test. And it's proved in this game too. Knight f3, knight c6, and during his career Fischer goes for bishop c4 and more often bishop b5, the famous Ruy Lopez opening. In this game he prefers bishop c4, and after bishop c5 Fischer chooses not the classical continuations by playing d3 or c3. He chooses for b4, the Evans Gambit. The idea of Evans Gambit is to sacrifice a pawn to gain some time in order to increase his lead in development and to gain more central control. Bishop takes b4, Reuben Fine chooses, but it's also possible to play bishop b6 by declining the gambit, and I hope examine this move later in the game Kasparov-Piquet 1995. And let's go to main move, bishop takes b4, c3. Attacking the bishop and preparing the later central move d4. Bishop a5, and we know that bishop c5 is not a good move after d4. It can be seen in many of old masters, Murphy's or Anderson's games, which we might discuss in the future. And also it's possible to play bishop e7 move. c3, bishop a5, d4. White sacrifices another pawn, as we said, to gain lead in development, increase his development advantage and gain more space in the center. E takes d4, and nowadays grandmasters mainly prefer the move d6. And after, let's say, queen b3, queen d7, d takes e5, and bishop b6 in order to get rid of this strong battery of bishop and queen. This can be observed in many games, but mainly you can observe in this year played in Dortmund 2015 by Nisipiano and Caruana, and in 2014 in Dortmund tournament Nakamura and Anand game went like this. And black in those games, black is fine. E takes d4, castles, and d takes c3. This is a bit too greedy, and black shouldn't go like this, but he hopes for, by gaining some material, he might get some advantage by doing that, but this is not the case here. Queen b3. Fischer immediately attacks the opponent's weak spot on f7, and normally black should castle by protect this point, but it's impossible because of the g8 knight, so he has to protect this with his queen, and he plays queen e7, I think, which is not a good move too. And today we know that instead of this, queen f6 is mainly played by players. And after queen e7, Fischer naturally makes another move, knight takes c3, and this is already a critical situation for black, who has to choose the right continuation, and he couldn't do that by playing knight f6. It's already understandable, but in order to survive, he has to take this knight, not to allow this knight to go to d5 square by playing bishop takes c3. And it's understandable. Fine wants to castle and get a good game. He has 2 pawns up, but Fischer now has to play the king in the center, doesn't let his opponent to castle. And king in the center has 2 rules. Playing against the king in the center has 2 rules. First, prevent your opponent from castling. And second and most important, open the central files. In this case, E file is more important because king is stuck there and it's bound to open, and you can open it by playing knight d5. Knight takes d5. Although it's hard to suggest another move, queen e4 looks tempting, but after an easy developing move, bishop g5, black is in very hard situation because rook fe1 is threatened, knight takes f6 is threatened, and probably it's dead lost for him. Knight takes d5, e takes d5. Before castling, white opens the e file and attacks the knight on c6, so he has to escape. Knight e5, knight takes e5, he has to take queen takes e5, and again he wants to castle, but Fischer logically develops another piece and protecting his rook on a1 by bishop b2, and now black has to protect his g7 pawn in order to castle there and escape from e file with his queen, so queen g5 logical move. And after this point you can stop the video and trying to guess the Fischer's idea, but the clue is that black is severely underdeveloped and he has hanging piece on a5. As English Grandmaster John Nunn points out, that hanging pieces drop off and a5 bishop is hanging here, and black's only developed other piece is queen. He has to protect everything. He has to protect g7, he has to protect e7 because there is subtle threat of mate there. So it's hard to organize all forces to defend these critical squares. So Fischer goes for it. h4. This is deflection, the common theme in chess. You can deflect the pieces which defending the critical squares like e7 and g7, and Fischer does it. Fine takes on h4, but it's hard to suggest anything better. Let's say queen g6 to protect g7, but this gives up easily the bishop on a5, queen a3, attacking the bishop. Let's say bishop can go anywhere, but this wouldn't help him. Rook fe1, and it soon ends with mate. Rook takes e1 and queen e7 checkmate. So queen is needed to protect not only g7 but also e7, and Fine goes for queen takes h4, but this gives up the pawn on g7. Bishop takes g7, rook g8, rook fe1 check, king d8, and the very last move of the game. And again I suggest you to stop the video and try to find the Fischer's move. The idea is again simple. Queen is the master of key squares, defending f6, e7, because now white can mate in one if queen on h4 wasn't situated there. So Fischer tries to deflect the queen again, and for the last time. This cannot be done in by simple means. I think this only and only can be done by this queen g3, a very strong move, trying to deflect queen, and f6 square is needed to mate the black king. Now Reuben Fine resigns the game because he understands that losing the queen is inevitable and it's hard to suggest any move here. So a nice victory by Fischer in just 17 moves by just using the logical developing moves and control of the space. Thank you for watching and see you in the next game.